Alright everyone, it's time to talk about a little bit of poll analysis. I'll pull that up from RCP as well because there are a couple of new polls whose end period is actually new. But first let me tell you, I'm a little bit gunked up today. Last night the Cats decided to have a concert. Like, normally Quincy occasionally does singy thing, and I'm an insomniac, it'll wake me up. His sister joined in. This is a rare occasion. Every third month or so she'll decide to be singy. And so you got two cats from like 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. keeping me awake. So I slept in for several hours, and then I got warm like a muffin, and I just laid there in bed and didn't want to get up. So, yeah, sue me. Anyway, looking at, oh yeah, and then the coffee machine stopped working, had to replace it. So it's been a little bit of a hectic day, and it's, about noon, and I'm finally making my videos. Anyway, we'll talk about poll analysis here. I'll try to clear my head as the caffeine hopefully quickly kicks in. I'm going to be downing the fucking energy drinks later, trust me. I'm going to inject myself with the robot pee this time. What we look at when we look at the new polls, like the post-debate polls, there are only a few of them. I think Politico is the main one. What we see is that there's really not that much statistical movement. Like, if you look at the graphs trending, you can see Warren arguably has ticked up very slightly, and Buttigieg as well. Arguably Harris and Biden down slightly. However, the newer polls, the four newest polls, actually paint a better picture for Biden than a couple of the polls from before that. He arguably ticks upwards in the last week or so after having started to slump, like he stabilizes and regains that lost ground. If that's in fact the case, he's running out the clock. There's not a whole lot of time left for anyone really to challenge him other than Warren. The problem is, if she has a top-tier debate performance, she was considered, for the most part, of the recognizable, viable candidates, she was the winner of the debate. I say Buttigieg did better, but as I observed, because he's further down the ballot, fewer people care, and there's no statistical win or movement for him, and that's what happened. He gained maybe half a point. Warren wins the debate and yet barely ekes out any additional support that she could easily lose week to week anyway. It's soft support. That's not a great win for Elizabeth Warren. My operative belief has always been that the DNC wants to crown Joe Biden the nominee. I think it's a crazy idea. I think it's the biggest mistake they've ever made. I think if they nominate Joe Biden, they lose. I think you will see Trump 2020. There's little question in my mind because he is so fucked up. Let's just be blunt about it. Joe Biden's a fucked up individual. He doesn't know what he's doing. Elizabeth Warren is more stable and is more capable of strategy, but not because of her actual platform. Her platform is basically a weird fusion of what she believed in and still does, and what she hopes that you'll think she believes in order to woo far-left voters. She wants to be the missing link, and her missing link platform is really, she is the median of the party at this point, which should worry any sane Democrats that are left out there. Bernie Sanders has gotten no traction. There's no change in the polling for him. He's still in third, a point or two behind Warren, arguably. And that makes him technically non-viable. I mean, the dude's a self-proclaimed socialist anyway. By that token, he does, I think, have a low ceiling. He's pretty much achieved it already. He already peaked many months ago and, went into a trough. There's really no other movement to speak of. What you've got is the big loser is Harris, which I think is good for the Democrats and good for the world, actually. But otherwise, other than Harris being down a point, Warren maybe Buttigieg up a point and a half, there's really no movement at all in the new polls. In fact, it looks exactly the same as the previous polling period, except that Joe Biden appears to have recovered a little bit of his lost ground. If that's the case, then it's basically same old, same old. You're looking at the same polling you were looking at 3 weeks ago, except that Kamala is now in danger of falling to fifth behind Pete Buttigieg. In the aggregate, keep in mind, individual polls always get talked about by people. A candidate will always crow about a poll that looks extra good for them, even if it's an obvious outlier number. A person will never talk about a poll that's extra bad for them. Again, it's an outlier number. They don't talk about aggregates unless the aggregate shows that they are a strong front runner, and they're like, in a poll of polls, I am ahead of everyone. Vote for me. Even then, there's an impetus to use the outlier because the outlier specifically is better for you than the aggregate. It's not correct. It's not that the number is right or more accurate. It's probably not. It's probably wrong. But you want to use it anyway. It looks better if Trump comes out and says, Rasmussen says my approval's at 52. Well, your approval's not at 52. That's an outlier. If you wrap it up in an aggregate, your approval's certainly better than what your opponent's polls are going to see. CNN says his approval's at 32%. Well, it's not there either. It's somewhere in between the two. You can aggregate and measure that number accordingly. When you look at RCP, though, again, link in the description, not really that much change. There's no Biden plunge, but there's no surge for anybody. There's no anti-Biden. Elizabeth Warren's the closest thing they have. She's still stubbornly 5 to 10 points behind in the polls. That's a significant gap. The gap between Joe Biden's aggregated total and everyone else's is very significant. 5 to 10 points is a lot. 5 points is, you can overcome that. It's just a matter of, that person has to do something particularly shitty, you have to do something really great, really, really strong debate performance, but you don't have that. The audience agrees Elizabeth Warren's the winner, yet she gains almost no apparent lasting support whatsoever for the actual debate itself. That's terrible for her. It shows that people are beginning to harden behind the candidates they already support. That could be a real problem for anyone seeking to challenge Biden. Warren, if she's smart, will try to get Kamala to drop out and endorse her. That ultimately would be the easiest way to beat Biden right now. It would have to be Warren, and it would have to be through that, or maybe Bernie Sanders gets Buttigieg to endorse him and drop out or something. The problem is that there's no reason for any viable candidate to drop out at all, because in the proportional system employed by the Democrats, you can get 10% of the vote in a state and still get a couple of delegates. Well, that gives you potential kingmaker powers. Look at it this way. If I'm Kamala Harris, I'm saying, look, I can't win, but at a brokered convention, if that happens, if no one has a clear-cut majority and a mandate to lead the party, I can throw my weight behind someone in exchange for some sort of political kickback. Maybe funding for some partner's project. Maybe someone winks and nods and gives someone a government grant. Maybe it's I get appointed to a cabinet position. Maybe I'm running mate or something. And that's basically how it works within politics. By the way, this is one of the less scummy things that happens in big money politics. It's not just the DNC. Don't fucking kid yourself, Republicans. The same fucking shit happens at the RNC too. And worse. You remember the Ron Paul era? You remember when they had a teleprompter there? It even had like the results of an oral vote as it was actually happening. Oh, the yays have it. We will proceed. Fuck Ron Paul, basically. I remember that because someone recorded from behind the actual angle, and you could see it up on screen. It was very, very interesting at the time. That's why they changed the rules with regards to how they handled their get-togethers, the RNC. They changed their rules after, much to the chagrin of all of the Ron Paul voters, which is why the Tea Party surges in and Trump gets in. Basically, the RNC destroyed the neocons by trying to help the neocons, and I think the Democrats are doing the same right now. The rule changes that they've made were supposed to preclude people like Sanders and Harris from being a problem so that they could just coronate somebody like Joe Biden. Whoops, I don't think it worked, because the delegate process is going to get kind of messy. If polling stays the same, I would still favor Biden to be the nominee. And I've said recently, well, based on the fact that he's in decline mentally and physically, it seems, based on his decreasing polling numbers, Elizabeth Warren is now rising up. She is. Keep that in mind, though. If even a good debate performance for Warren, that Joe Biden didn't do that great, and he did okay, but he wasn't on Warren's level or Buttigieg's level. He was closer to a Kamala Harris. If even that can't give her any form of real push, of real edge, any real traction towards growing her coalition, Biden will get in even if he's vastly unpopular, even if he's demented, even if it is obvious that the DNC is rigging things in his favor, which, it is in favor of him and Elizabeth Warren. They don't care which one wins, by the way. It's all bread and circus between the two of them. When they spar and stuff, this is just mommy and daddy fighting. The DNC does not care about what the outcome is. That's about all. Peace out.